right, so let's jump into this whole intermittent fasting thing. It seems like everyone's talking about it, but there's also a ton of information, and honestly, some of it's pretty confusing. Like, does it really mess with your metabolism? And can you actually eat whatever you want when you're not fasting?
Yeah, it's definitely become a hot topic. And with that comes a lot of misinformation. One of the biggest myths we need to debunk right away is this whole idea that intermittent fasting damages your metabolism.
Yeah, that's one I've heard too. You would think that not eating would, like, slow your metabolism down.
Right. You'd think so. But research actually suggests the opposite. Studies have shown that intermittent fasting can actually improve insulin sensitivity, which is key for a healthy metabolism.
Okay, so can you remind me how insulin sensitivity plays into all of this?
Sure. So insulin's a hormone that helps your body use glucose for energy. And when your cells become resistant to insulin, it leads to a buildup of glucose in your bloodstream. And that can really mess with your metabolic health and even increase your risk of developing type 2 diabetes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right.
So by improving your insulin sensitivity, IF is actually helping your body regulate blood sugar better.
Exactly. And that's not all. There's also evidence that intermittent fasting can trigger autophagy.
Autophagy.
Yeah, it's like a cellular spring cleaning.
Okay.
Think of it as your body getting rid of old damaged cells and making new healthy ones.
Wow, that's incredible. So we're talking about preventing diabetes,
Yeah.
A&D, promoting cellular regeneration. It's starting to sound like a magic bullet. But there has to be a catch, right? There's that myth that you can eat whatever you want, like junk food, as long as you're fasting.
Right. Let's address that one. So while intermittent fasting does provide this structured time frame for eating, the quality of your food choices during your eating windows still really matters.
So no late-night pizza binges.
Uh-huh. Unfortunately not. Think of it this way. You wouldn't put cheap gas in a high-performance sports car
Right.
and expect it to run smoothly. Your body's the same way. You need to give it high-quality fuel to function at its best.
Okay, that makes sense. So INF is not a free pass to just indulge. It's about being strategic about when you eat and making good food choices.
Exactly. And speaking of timing, that brings us to another fascinating aspect of intermittent fasting, metabolic switching.
Okay, here's where it gets interesting. I've read a bit about this. Doesn't it have something to do with your body switching from burning glucose to burning fat for fuel?
You got it. When you fast for a while, your body starts to deplete its glycogen stores. Those are its primary source of energy. Once those stores are depleted, it starts to break down fat for fuel, and that process is called ketosis.
So IF basically pushes your body to become a fat-burning machine.
Precisely. And this metabolic switch has been linked to all sorts of benefits: weight loss, improved blood sugar control, and even a reduced risk of chronic diseases like obesity and diabetes.
Wait, so it's not just about weight loss. There are benefits for heart health, too.
Absolutely. When your body gets better at burning fat, it can lead to lower blood pressure, improved cholesterol levels, and even reduced inflammation, all crucial for a healthy heart.
Okay, I'm seeing the bigger picture now. But with all these potential benefits, it seems like everyone would be doing IF. Are there any downsides or things people should watch out for?
That's a great question. And it leads us perfectly into our next discussion, the different types of intermittent fasting and how to choose the right approach for you.
All right, let's get into that.
So are you ready to explore all the different ways to do intermittent fasting?
Yeah, let's hear it. From what I've seen, there are like a bunch of different ways to do IF.
Yeah, there are. Some popular ones are alternate day fasting, the 5.2 diet, and time-restricted feeding. Each one has its own pros and cons, so it's about finding what works for you and your lifestyle.
Okay, let's break those down a little bit. What about alternate day fasting? That sounds kind of intense.
It can be. Like the name suggests, it's basically switching between days of eating normally and then days of either drastically cutting your calories or not eating at all. Some studies show that it can be effective for weight loss and improving metabolic health, but it's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah, I can imagine. Those fasting days would take some serious willpower. What about the 5.2 diet? That one seems a little easier.
Yeah, it is for a lot of people. With 5.2, you eat normally for 5 days a week and then restrict your calories to about 500 or 600 for the other 2 days. So it's a bit more flexible. You can choose your fasting days based on your schedule.
Interesting. So it's more like a weekly cycle. And then what about time-restricted feeding? That one seems to be like the most popular these days.
It is getting really popular. Time-restricted feeding, or TRF, is basically limiting your eating to a certain window of time every day. A lot of people like this one because you don't have to count calories, and you can eat normally within your window.
Right. I've heard of the 168 method. Is that a type of time-restricted feeding?
Yeah, exactly. With 168, you fast for 16 hours and then have an 8-hour eating window. A lot of people find this one fits well into their lives. because they're basically just skipping breakfast and having their first meal around noon.
Got it. So you're basically compressing your meals into a shorter time period. With all these different methods, it seems like there's a lot of ways to personalize it.
Yeah, there is, and that's where it can get tricky. It's important to be aware of some common pitfalls when starting IF, no matter which method you choose.
Okay, let's talk about those. What are some things people should watch out for?
One of the biggest mistakes people make is not drinking enough water when they're fasting. Staying hydrated is super important. It helps you feel good and avoid headaches or feeling tired.
So it's not just about when you eat, but also about staying hydrated throughout the day. What about overeating during your eating windows?
Yeah, that's another common one. Just because you have a shorter time to eat doesn't mean you should go crazy. It's important to listen to your body's cues and eat until you're satisfied, not totally stuffed.
So IF requires a bit of mindful eating.
Exactly. Another thing to keep in mind is that IF isn't for everyone. People with certain health conditions might need to adjust their approach or avoid it completely.
Right, that makes sense. That actually reminds me, we should address this common question. Is intermittent fasting safe for women?
It's a great question. And the answer is it depends. Some studies suggest there could be benefits for women's health. But it's super important to talk to your doctor before trying it, especially if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, or have any underlying health issues.
So individualized care is key. Are there any other health conditions where IF might not be a good fit?
Yeah, for example, people with diabetes need to be super careful because it can impact their blood sugar levels. It's crucial to work with a healthcare professional, to monitor blood sugar and adjust meds if needed.
Okay, so personalized guidance is really important, especially if you're managing other conditions. What about people taking medication in general? Should they be worried about interactions?
It's always best to talk to a doctor or pharmacist before starting IF if you're on any meds. It could potentially change how your body absorbs or metabolizes certain medications.
That's good advice. So IF has a lot of potential benefits, but it's definitely not something to jump into without talking to your doctor.
Exactly. Now let's get into one area where IF seems particularly promising, its impact on the gut microbiome.
Ah, yes, the gut microbiome. That fascinating world of bacteria living inside us. It seems like it plays a role in everything. What's the connection with IF?
That's what's so fascinating. New research is showing that intermittent fasting can actually influence the types and variety of bacteria in our gut, and that's incredibly important for our overall health.
So it's not just about the food we're eating, but also how IF might be shaping the environment in our gut.
Precisely. Studies are indicating that IF could help promote a healthier balance of bacteria in our gut. It's kind of like giving our gut a reset.
That's amazing. But wait, I've also heard that having an imbalance in gut bacteria can lead to all kinds of problems, from like digestive issues to even more serious things like autoimmune disorders.
You're right. And that's where IF might be able to help. By changing when we eat, IF might create an environment that helps good bacteria grow and keeps the bad ones in check.
So could IF be a way to prevent or even treat some of these conditions related to gut imbalances?
That's what researchers are looking into. We need more studies, but the early evidence is really promising.
Okay, so this is an area where the research is still developing, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Now, I'm curious about this whole longevity thing with IF. I've heard some pretty bold claims about it extending lifespan. Is there any truth to that?
There's some evidence that connects IF and longevity, but we have to be careful about overstating those claims.
What kind of evidence are we talking about? Has it actually been shown to make people live longer?
Not for sure. However, studies have shown that IF can extend lifespan in other organisms, like yeast worms and mice. We can't say for sure it applies to humans, but it suggests there might be something there.
I see. So we can't say for sure that IF will make us live longer. But the research is pointing to some interesting possibilities.
Yeah.
What are some of the ideas about how IF might affect aging?
Well, one leading theory is that IF activates certain cellular pathways that are involved in longevity and fighting off disease. Remember autophagy, that cellular cleaning process we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, some researchers think that IF enhances autophagy, which could help protect our cells from damage and slow down aging.
So it's like IF is giving ourselves a tune-up?
Kind of. There's also a group of proteins called sirtuins that are thought to be involved in regulating things like metabolism information and DNA repair. Some research suggests that IF might activate these sirtuins, which could contribute to its anti-aging effects.
Wow, so we're talking about potentially boosting cellular repair
Hmm.
and even influencing how our genes express themselves. That's pretty amazing. But like you said, we need more research to understand the whole picture.
Right. But the early findings are exciting, and the potential benefits of IF go beyond just physical health. There's growing evidence suggesting that IF might also be good for brain health.
Now, that's something I want to hear more about.
Well, studies have shown that IF can improve cognitive function, boost memory, and even protect the brain against neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Wait, so we're talking about potentially preventing or even slowing down some of the most serious brain diseases? That's huge. What's the thinking behind how IF could have such a big impact on the brain?
There are a few ideas. One theory focuses on the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF.
BDNF, that sounds familiar. Isn't that like a growth factor for the brain?
You got it. BDNF helps brain cells grow and survive, and some research suggests that IF can increase BDNF levels. This increase could help enhance cognitive function and protect the brain from damage.
So it's like IF is giving our brains a fertilizer boost.
Haha, that's a good way to put it. Another potential mechanism involves ketone production.
Ah, yes, ketones. Those molecules our body makes when it switches to burning fat for fuel.
Exactly. Well, some research suggests that ketones might actually protect the brain. They could help shield it from damage and improve cognitive function.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connections. EAF triggers metabolic switching leading to ketone production,
Hmm.
which then potentially has all these positive effects on brain health. It's all connected. But with all these potential benefits, are there any risks or downsides we should be aware of when it comes to brain health and IF?
That's an important question, and it leads us into an area where we need to be a bit cautious. While the research on IF and brain health is promising, there are still some things we don't know.
Like what?
Well, for one, we need more research to confirm these benefits in humans. And to figure out the best IF methods for brain health, it's possible that certain IF approaches might be better than others, or that some people might be more likely to experience negative effects.
So it's not a guaranteed brain booster.
Why?
And we need more research to really understand the benefits and potential risks.
Exactly. It's also important to consider that everyone's different. People with certain neurological conditions might need to be careful with IF, as it could make their symptoms worse.
That makes sense. So while the research on IF and brain health is exciting, it's crucial to talk to a healthcare professional before making any big changes, especially if you have any pre-existing conditions.
Absolutely. And speaking of practical things, I think it's time we address some frequently asked questions about IF.
Perfect timing. I've got a whole list of them, and I bet our listeners do too. Let's dive in and see if we can answer them.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's get into some of those FAQs about IF. One that I see all the time is, how long should I fast for?
Hmm.
Like, is there a magic number?
There isn't really a magic number that works for everyone. It depends on your goals and how well you tolerate fasting. Some people start with shorter fasts, like 12 hours, and then gradually increase the time as they get used to it. Others prefer longer fasts, like 24 or even 36 hours. The key is to listen to your body and not push yourself too hard, especially when you're first starting out.
Makes sense. So it's kind of a find what feels right situation.
Mm-hmm.
What about the food we eat during our eating windows? Any specific recommendations?
Definitely. Remember, quality matters. Focus on nutrient-dense foods that give you sustained energy and keep you feeling full. Think whole, unprocessed foods like fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats, and whole grains. Those help avoid those blood sugar spikes and crashes that can make you crave junk food and overeat.
So it's not a free pass to just eat whatever you want just because you've been fasting.
Right.
What about side effects? Do people usually have any unpleasant side effects when they first start IF?
Some people do, especially in the beginning. Headaches, fatigue, or constipation are pretty common, but they're usually temporary. And you can minimize them by staying hydrated, getting enough electrolytes, and slowly increasing your fasting window.
Okay, so those initial side effects are usually nothing to worry about. But what if someone has side effects that are more serious or don't go away?
That's when you should stop and talk to your doctor. They can help you figure out if IF is right for you and how to manage any problem.
Right. Always better to be safe. Speaking of safety, we talked earlier about IF being potentially risky for women with certain conditions. Are there any other groups of people who should be extra careful with IF?
People with diabetes definitely need to be super cautious because IF can affect their blood sugar levels. It's really important for them to work closely with a healthcare professional to monitor their blood sugar and adjust medications as needed.
So individualized care is really important. What about exercise? How does IF impact working out?
It's interesting. Some people find that IF actually helps them perform better when they exercise because it boosts fat burning and gives them more energy. Others experience the opposite. They feel tired and have less energy, so their workouts suffer. It really depends on the person.
So for people who are active or athletic, it's a bit of trial and error to see what works best for them. They might need to adjust their fasting schedule, the timing of their workouts, or their nutrition. And of course, listening to their body is key.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about another concern I hear a lot, muscle loss. Do people lose muscle mass when they do IF?
Yeah, that's a common one. People are worried that if they're not eating enough, they'll lose muscle.
It's true that anytime you're in a calorie deficit, you could potentially lose muscle if you're not careful. But IF doesn't automatically make you lose muscle. The key is to make sure you're getting enough protein during your eating windows and to do strength training regularly. Protein is what your muscles need to repair and grow, and strength training helps stimulate that growth.
So it's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Enough protein and regular strength training will help you maintain muscle while doing IF.
Right.
What about hunger? Any tips for managing those hunger pangs that people often get when they're fasting?
Hunger is definitely a natural response, but there are ways to make it easier. Staying hydrated is super important because sometimes thirst can feel like hunger. Distracting yourself with activities you enjoy can help take your mind off food. And if you're really struggling, sipping on some unsweetened tea or coffee, or having a small cup of bone broth can help tide you over until your eating window.
Those are helpful tips. And the good news is that those hunger pangs usually get better as your body adjusts to IF. Another question I see a lot is about what to eat to break a fast. Any suggestions?
Yeah, the key is to break your fast gently and avoid overeating. Start with something small and easy to digest, like a smoothie or soup, and then gradually increase the portion size and the types of foods you're eating as your body gets used to it. Focus on protein, fiber, and healthy fats. Those will help you feel full and keep your blood sugar stable so you don't have those energy crashes.
Got it. So things like eggs, avocado, toast a smoothie with protein powder and berries, or a salad with grilled chicken or fish, those all sound great.
Exactly.
What about coffee? Can you still have coffee while fasting?
Black coffee is usually fine. It doesn't have any calories, so it won't break your fast. But adding cream sugar or other high-calorie stuff will definitely kick you out of your fasted state. So if you love coffee, stick to black coffee or use calorie-free sweeteners during your fasting hours.
Good to know. I don't think I could give up my morning coffee. We've covered so much today. But I wanted to emphasize that this is just a starting point. There's a ton more to learn about intermittent fasting. And we encourage you to keep researching and learning.
Exactly. And most importantly, talk to your healthcare provider before making any big changes to your diet. They can help you decide if IF is right for you and how to do it safely and effectively.
This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of our listeners, we want to hear from you. Have you tried intermittent fasting? What was your experience like? Share your stories and insights with us. We're all in this together. This is just the beginning of the conversation.